Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Ruben. How are you doing? Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Rufai.
Morning, family.
Let's jump in. I feel like I've come in such a good mood, but like the stories today actually aren't the most positive. So like perhaps I'll rein it back in. Let's start our World Brief. This morning starts in Bangladesh, where the world's longest-serving female head of government, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's 15-year reign, has ended with her resignation and subsequent fleeing of the country to neighboring India, according to reports. Now, this is happening amid violent protests in Bangladesh that have claimed the lives of nearly 300 people. These protests originally began in July over a quota system for government jobs, which reserved a third of civil service jobs for descendants of veterans from the country's 1971 independence war with Pakistan. Now, this unpopular system essentially stoked up already existing tensions in the country because Bangladesh has high unemployment. 400,000 new graduates are competing for 3,000 civil service jobs. And that was the crux of the issue. That and, of course, the frustration among Bangladeshi youth over the country's seemingly one-party system or one-party rule even over the past 15 years, which swelled into a movement demanding Sheikh Hasina to leave government. Now, Bangladesh's Army Chief General says an interim government will be formed soon. Let's wander over to the United States now, where Vice President Kamala Harris is close to announcing her pick as running mate. Reports say the final choice will be made between Governors Tim Walz of Minnesota and Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania. Now, Harris is expected to make her announcement today. Might even be Wednesday for us in Nigeria and over this side of the world, but definitely today, Tuesday in the United States, ahead of her first scheduled public appearance with her running mate this evening at Temple University in Philadelphia. Philadelphia is, of course, in Pennsylvania. Might be a hint as to who she may pick, may not, but that's where she'll be speaking this evening, and that's where she will share who her pick is. If we take a look at this graphic, just drawn up a graphic to look at the three different candidates. The first one looks at Shapiro himself, who is 51 years old. Josh Shapiro is a rising star of the Democratic Party. He does have strong approval ratings in Pennsylvania, whose 19 electoral votes make it a must-win state for both Harris and Trump. He's also a former state attorney, just like Kamala Harris, and if picked, he would be the country's first Jewish vice president, while Harris is also, as we all know, seeking to become the first Black and South Asian American woman elected US president. But on the other side of that, Shapiro's strong support for Israel, I know that there's been a release of an op-ed he wrote when he was 20 years old, could alienate some progressive voters, definitely alienate Palestinian supporting voters too. So there's that issue. When we're looking at the Republican efforts to turn around this Israel-Gaza war. And then if we look at Tim Walz now, he's 60 years old. I wish we had our graphics up so it's clearer what I'm saying. But then let's take a look at Tim Walz. He's 60 years old. He's also a former US Army National Guard member, and he's also a former teacher. And he's raised his profile in recent weeks as an effective advocate for Harris. He's done a great job of supporting her since her seemingly her being chosen as the presumptive nominee. He's also, as I said, a former member of Congress from a Republican-leaning district. Watts has proven to have some form of appeal to rural white voters, though he has also championed progressive policies as governor, such as free school meals and expanded paid worker leave. While Minnesota, is solidly Democratic state, it is close, of course, to Wisconsin and Michigan, which are two crucial battleground states. And then we can't also count out my actual favorite. I do think that it's going to be Senator Mark Kelly. I doubt that he may make the cards. He is Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, and he is, as I've said many times before, a veteran and an astronaut as well. But before I come over to you three for comment, there does also appear to be perhaps a strange relationship between the House Speaker Emerger, Nancy Pelosi, and of course President Biden. Let's just take a quick listen to this clip.
President Biden since he dropped out?
No, I have not.
Do you hope to?
Yes, I hope to.
Yeah.
We're all busy.
Is everything okay with your relationship?
You'd have to ask him, but I hope so.
So early to do these. All righty. Well, I don't know if you were able to hear Nancy Pelosi just there, but she was interviewed on, well, she's peddling a new book. So she's been doing the media rounds, and a lot of questions have been about the status of her relationship with President Biden. And a lot of times she said, well, you'd have to ask him. But according to her, everything's okay. But it does seem as though there is some form of discord between the two of them, perhaps.
In fact, so a lot of people were peddling part of the story that, oh, it was Pelosi camp and a couple of other people that pushed Biden out. But I don't think we should peddle that story, because we've seen how the campaign took momentum after Biden left, and Biden was not just ready, for it any longer, despite the fact that he won in the primaries and all of that. I want to go to Bangladesh. This is a sad indictment on the legacy of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. That's Sheikh Hasina's father. Was a founding father of Bangladesh that was killed in 1975 in the military uprising. It was very sad. And Bangladesh is a testament to the fact that if the poor people are not happy in your country, then you have a problem. As regards all the headline numbers, Bangladesh had it. Bangladesh has just improved electricity generation with over 10,000 megawatts, I think in the last 10, 15, 20 years or thereabouts. Their average was 30,000 megawatts. They were doing well. The currency was stable and all of that. But she oppressed the opposition. She pushed them out of the mix. Since she took over power from Zia about 15 years ago, she's had fraudulent elections. And it was a recipe for a cocktail of disaster. This, giving concessions to veterans, families, and relatives, just only heightened the problem. If they had told us that yesterday morning she was leaving, she will never believe it. But now she's out. In fact, it was so sad in Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, that they had to start destroying the monuments, build the statues in favor of Mujibur Rahman. So it speaks volume. If the poor people are not happy, and that's why I have a problem with trickle-down economics, where people think if the economy is doing, oh yes, you know why?
Go ahead.
It never trickles down. Okay. You remember Reagan? Reagan caused a lot more poverty in America. The rich got richer for Reagan. Reaganomics was good for the rich. But trickle-down economics never trickles down. And that's why Nigeria should learn from Bangladesh. We might have to go and learn about poverty. We have not studied the peculiarity of the poverty in Nigeria. Two people I might like to quote here, Esther Dufalo and Banerjee. They won a Nobel Prize in poverty. It has to be said. Right. If the poor people are not happy in your country, no matter how your headline economic development prospect is, right, it will give you problems.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. So what's next? I mean, for me, Bangladesh, and obviously because of what's happening in Nigeria and in Kenya as well with regards to protests, it seemed at some point for a number of citizens in different parts of the world, protests seemed to be the only way because their leaders weren't listening. Right. Now, the protest in Bangladesh started in July. And evolved, like Rufai had mentioned, started off first of all with regards to quota system for jobs. One would imagine that why would you be worried about quota systems for people who are veterans, especially in terms of the independence of Bangladesh? Country, yes. You would imagine that their relatives, that should be a way of honoring them. But what the young people had said was that they had an unemployment issue which wasn't being handled. And whilst the country was prospering under Sheikh Hasina, the fact that the jobs didn't get to them because they were mainly factory jobs. Right. So graduates weren't getting jobs. The jobs were about 70% reserved for certain people. And so they had issues with that. This then ballooned to bigger issues around corruption, the fact that, it was not a democratic government in that sense of the word. There were a lot of issues or stories around extrajudicial killings, people who, just high-handedness. In fact, in some ways, it was described as a pro-democrat now becoming an autocrat, which was now leading an autocracy and almost a dent of her father's image. Right. But going forward now, I don't know if it's from frying pan to fire, because the army chief and the military have now come in to say that they were going to set up, elections, and they're now saying we don't want the military to come in. And that's another conversation that's happened even on this side of the world, that what is the alternative? What the people have said they want is that they want an interim government under the Nobel laureate, Nobel winner, Professor Mohammed Yunus, and that's what they want. So let's see if their request would be met, or the military would come in and take this as an opportunity to move in. I don't think it would be good for Bangladesh.
What we have seen in Bangladesh is the demonstration of people power. And that protest began with students saying that civil service employment quota is discriminatory. It's against the people. And they demanded the resignation of the Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, daughter of the independence leader of Bangladesh, Sheikh Rahman. And that protest,
along with many members of their family, I think.
Sheikh Hasina,
Yes.
daughter of Sheikh Rahman.
Right.
So we had those protests in Dhaka with the students demonstrating. And now it has reached a head yesterday on Sunday. On Sunday, 79 people were killed. Before then, 67 persons were killed. Many more were injured. And so yesterday, they stormed the presidential palace, looted the place. Sheikh Hasina was forced to resign and flee. So to that extent, it's people power in demonstration. But Hasina is gone. But it is still a long road ahead for Bangladesh. Now, how are they trying to manage the situation? The military leader, General Zaman, has come forward to say, look, there will be an interim government who will step in and control the situation. I've told the military not to shoot, not to kill. I've told the police not to kill. We're in control. Now, the president, Shubahuddin, has also spoken. He has given directives to release some of the protesters that were, detained. The former opposition leader has also been released. And we have been promised that there will be elections in due course. So we don't know. The future of Bangladesh hangs in the balance. What can be established is that when you run a country and you don't address the interests of the minorities, you are likely to find yourself in this kind of situation. And that people power in any democracy is the key of it, because democracy belongs to the people. In the United States, very quickly, I think I addressed the subject yesterday. I may as well do again today. Pamela Harris is going to have a rally today in Philadelphia.
Yes.
And the big issue is that she was going to announce running mate. Now, over the weekend, the last 3 days, over the weekend, they were having meetings, interviewing the candidates. By Monday afternoon, that is yesterday's afternoon, we were told that she had narrowed down to John Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, 51 years old, and Tim Walz, who is a 60-year-old, also a governor of Minnesota. What is it about the two? Shapiro is a rising Democratic Party star. So the assumption is that she could ride on that popularity to further energize the party, to give her campaign a momentum, now that the Trump party is trying to adapt to the new reality. Tim Walz, the thing about him is that he's mature, he's experienced. The blue wall states, particularly Michigan, Wisconsin, Pamela Harris is leading in Wisconsin, is that if you pick Tim Walz, it could help the campaign. Now, McKelly of Arizona has not been totally ruled out. But I guess by today, we will know the decision that Pamela Harris would take. Right. But the big issues, the big elephants in the room, the Middle East, the economy. Now, who is going to give Americans the best option? Right. Will it be Kamala Harris? Will it be Donald Trump? So by Donald Trump, they have problems in their camp, trying to adapt to a new enemy.
Righty. Well, let's take a look at our newspapers. I know we're fast running out of time. We'll definitely start with our Nigerian papers. Let's start with the front page of This Day. And This Day is looking at different stories, of course, the hashtag End Bad Governance profiles. But one thing I'd like to discuss is the Emerging and Frontier Capital Report, EFC report, which says that this windfall tax amid industry recapitalization will break banks. The report by a US-based group also revealed that the banking industry is currently under high regulatory costs from cash reserve ration. the CRR, as well as an AMCON levy and deposit insurance premiums. It disclosed that the top 6 banks incurred regulatory costs to the tune of $1.8 billion in 2023 and a total of $7.6 billion over the past 5 years. That's between 2018 to 2023. The EFC report, which is called More Pain for Longer, I'm sure the Global Business Report will go into further detail. It also talks about how Nigerian bank investors understood the government's need for revenue. At the same time, it also has to consider the fact that the tax could impact the banking sector negatively. Let's move on to the New Telegraph. And the New Telegraph is looking at the Federal High Court in Lagos State, which on Monday nullified the sale of a 49% equity stake in Nigeria Air to Ethiopian Airlines. The judgment was delivered in favor of the registered trustees of the airline operators of Nigeria and 5 other aviation industry stakeholders. And the court there granted all the relief sought by the plaintiffs, except for a request that they had asked for, which totaled to about 2 billion naira in damages. The plaintiffs in this case, some very popular names. You've got the likes of the airline operators of Nigeria, Asman Air, Air Peace, United African Airlines, United Nigeria Airlines, and then you also have the defendants in this case, which were, of course, Nigeria Air Limited, Ethiopia Airlines, the former Minister of Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika, the Federal Ministry of Aviation, and also the former Attorney General of the Federation, Abu Bakr Malami. The complainants raised concerns about the exclusion from this project, and also bidding process, which they called flawed. There's another story to do with aviation. I'll get to that a little later. But first, let's look at the front page of The Punch. And they are looking at the hunger protests. The military has been talking tough as pro-Russia rallies spread. I know that you had already discussed that, about how the waving of Russian flags is a treasonable offence, and the so-called tailor accused of making these flags has been arrested and also paraded in some of the front pages. If you take a look at the Daily Trust now, the Daily Trust looks at a warning issued by the federal government over travel to the United Kingdom as race riots there continue. People are targeting, of course, people of colour, people who are immediately visible or assumed to be Muslim there. And then if we move on to the front page of The Nation, against the backdrop of these End Bad Governance protests, businesses have opened in a somewhat peaceful Lagos, and looting has reached banks, sadly, in areas of Kaduna. If we move on to the Vanguard again looks at losses due to the violence reaching over 700 billion naira in just 5 days, and 31 people have been arrested for the flying of those Russian flags. And then lastly, let's take a look at the Daily Independent. Again, looking at aviation. Aviation unions have petitioned President Tinubu over the grounding of an Arik Air fleet. In an open letter, the group say that they're surprised to hear about any indebtedness involving the Arik Air founder. And they also argue that the aircrafts in question belong to secured creditors as a lien, and they are wondering how the equipment could be taken over by another creditor. We do have other papers, but one thing I'll just mention in terms of our international papers before I come to you all for comment, because we are running out of time, is the front page of the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail looks at comments from Elon Musk, where he says a war in the UK, a civil war, is inevitable. And that has definitely been condemned as stoking an already hostile situation happening in the United Kingdom.
Right, well, the UK is trying very hard to control the narrative and say that it's not yet boiling point and they're controlling things. So, of course, Elon Musk saying that. He's been speaking a lot, actually. He's now moved from the US to to the UK and talking about that. But I also think it was very important that the Nigerian Foreign Office has issued an advisory, because it is concerning for many people who are black and minor ethnic groups in the UK. Thank you very much, Adifemi.